Hello and welcome to another Dragonstorm Studios video. And today we're going to be drawing an interior space. It's going to be our first look at this sort of technique, so we're going to keep it nice and simple. We're going to start with drawing a square. And one trick for drawing a square is actually to line up the end of your ruler with the end of the paper, just to make sure that the lines are nice and straight. And it's really important that the square be as perfect as possible, because we're going to rely on some geometry. Anyone who tells you there's no math in art, well, you can send them to me. So I find the midpoint first by drawing diagonals through my square, and I'm going to draw a second smaller square inside the first by creating 4 lines which connect so that the square's corners line up with the X inside our square. And I think the most difficult part of this technique is just trying to find the words to describe it, because there's a lot of lines that are going to be done in our work. So you'll notice I'm drawing really lightly at first so that I can erase all the lines that I don't need when I'm finished. So once I get this done, and you know you did it right if all of the lines actually do connect properly here. Let's see how this one here turns out. Okay, I think we're good to go. I went a little bit overboard on this one here. Okay, and if it turns out that you're having trouble making that square fit inside, I would recommend just create any kind of square on the outside, draw the X in, and then just line up your back wall. This is the back wall of our interior space. So you've got a ceiling, you've got a floor, and 2 walls. If it's not perfect the first time, I wouldn't worry too much about that. The technique is the more important part. And you'll get better at lining up everything over time. Once you've got that done, you're going to erase the middle lines inside the smaller square. And that's our back wall there. And again, for our purposes here, we're gonna give it a try and see how this goes. I'm going to draw a door on this side of the room here on the left. Same sort of technique. I'm going to use my ruler to line up, make sure it's nice and straight. And I'm just going to draw a vertical line going up. Now, if we imagine that this midpoint is actually our eye line, where our eyes are, we want to make sure the door is higher than the eye line is. And that way we don't have to stoop when we're going through. I'm going to draw that line all the way to the midpoint. I'm not going to need that entire line though. I'm going to then draw the far vertical line of our door. And it's going to fit within the 2 lines of the floor and wall meeting, and the line I just drew from the top of the door to the midpoint. So there is a door. We're going to erase the lines we don't need anymore, and you can see that maybe a bit better that way. So there's our door on the left. We'll give it a door frame just to help give it some emphasis. And the tricky part about a door frame is that you have to kind of eyeball it a little bit. You want to make sure that the width of your door frame is smaller further away. So this is a fairly large door frame. We're going to make it quite a bit smaller farther away from us. And then that way it looks, again, in perspective. You've got things getting smaller as they get further away from us. And we'll put a door handle right there. Okay, and there's our door. I'm just going to make sure my lines here are a little bit darker. Okay, so I just took a minute to darken some of my lines so you can see the room a bit better. So there's our door. We're going to draw a window on the right here. So same procedures before, except that we're not creating our line segment going all the way to the bottom. It's kind of here in the middle, so we can look at our window. From the top and bottom of that structure, that line, we're going to draw 2 more lines that create a triangle toward the midpoint, just like this. Very similar to what we did with the door, except because it's not on the ground, we actually have to draw in that lower line. We then figure out how wide we want our window to be. Excuse me, I got a bit of a frog in my throat. There we go. And we can just erase the lines we don't need anymore, leaving the window intact there. To draw the frame around the window. And the beautiful part is that this could be, instead of a window, it could be a mirror, it could be a picture frame, it could be all sorts of other things. It doesn't have to necessarily be a window if you don't want it to be. The same principle applies to all sorts of different objects. So we can certainly be flexible when it comes to our creation here. And I'm just gonna tidy up my lines here a little bit. I try to keep my ruler from blocking the view as much as possible, but being right-handed, it can be a little bit tricky when working on the right-hand side. That goes for people who are left-handed on the left as well. So it's a bit tricky for everybody, but we find a way to make it work. Just create a diagonal to connect the edges there. And we've got ourselves a window, a door, and a room. Now this is fine, except that I want my floor to have some tiles, just to give it a bit more interest. So I've got 3 centimeters here at the bottom of my back wall, and every 1/2 centimeter. And it doesn't matter what kind of designation you put for that. It could be if your bottom wall here is wider, you can make it 1 centimeter each. As long as you've got equidistant dots going along where the floor meets the back wall, we can then use those to make a tiled floor. So from the middle dot to each of these lines, I'm just going to create another line that goes through my little tick mark there, all the way to the bottom. So I'll just do that here quickly and be right back with you. So we've got our lines drawn in. We've got to figure out how to make these floor tiles distant from one another, but still look like they're coming towards us, so in perspective. So I'm going to draw a diagonal from the bottom left corner of my back wall, it's right here, to the bottom right corner of my floor, right here. So bottom left of that back wall to bottom right of the floor. And I'm going to draw that in very lightly. And then you'll notice that that line intersects with each of the other lines I drew on the floor. Where those lines connect, I'm going to draw a horizontal line. So again, lining up with the side of my paper, the rulers, make sure they're nice and straight. I've got a connection here, or an intersection, I suppose, right there. And I've got an intersection right there. And one right there. Just make sure I'm lining these up properly. And you'll notice that as each line is being drawn in, they're getting wider and wider to give it the illusion of depth. Now, if I was to erase all of my guidelines on the back wall, and then that diagonal line, I'm left with just the floor tiles. And I could take some time to fill those back in. In fact, I could even go back and forth and fill in the tiles to make a black and white checkered pattern. And when I'm done, that would look something like this. So that's our first look at perspective, interior 1-point perspective. So all lines going to 1 point in my page. And we'll try populating our scene a little bit more in detail next time. Thanks so much for watching and have a fantastic day.